Hello everyone, my name is Loko and welcome to a new World of Warcraft Warlords of Draenor video. This is the alpha patch notes for the game, and I know this is very far from the release of the game. I know it's gonna take a while before we actually will be able to play it. The beta is probably still a couple of months away, but was reading those notes and I figured a lot of people aren't aware of those, so we should really talk about them. I'm a huge World of Warcraft fan, as a lot of you will know. I've played pretty much every single expansion that they brought out ever since the Burning Crusade, and I've always had a lot of fun in that. So these patch notes, I'm not gonna go all over them because I'm gonna show you how long they are. Basically, I'm scrolling down right now. You can see exactly what what everything is that they've changed so far about the Warlords of Draenor alpha opposed to the Mist of Pandaria version of the game. As you can see, it is a ton of stuff. So we're just gonna go to the very top of this. If you want specifics, check out the link in the description. They'll actually link you exactly to this article. But we're gonna have a look mostly at the too long didn't read summary of all the changes. So here we go. First and foremost, I've read through most of this, so hopefully I will be able to provide you with some more information than just the TLDR. But here we go. Character stats has been squished into smaller numbers that are easier to understand. It is important to understand that this is not a nerf, as enemies have been squished as well. What does this mean? Well, basically, if you're doing pretty good for yourself in the Mist of Pandaria side of things, I don't know exactly what the top DPSs are doing right now, but let's say you're doing 1,000,000 DPS in the Mist of Pandaria section, and your boss that you're fighting has like 500 million HP or whatever. I'm just pulling these numbers out of my ass right now. But you can see where they need to go with the next expansion, right? They need to make you feel more powerful, as this is just, you know, the normal progression when it comes to these type of games. So what they're doing, instead of you doing 10 million DPS in the next expansion, which is just kind of getting ridiculous, they are squishing down every single number. So whereas your gear used to have like maybe 3,000 intellect in the next expansion, you're gonna have maybe like 35 or maybe 300 or something. They're just gonna squish everything down quite a lot, where it becomes a lot more reasonable and a lot more understandable. Now, that doesn't mean like they're saying that the enemies are gonna get easier. They're just gonna scale everything back. So even if you're going back to old content, it will still be pretty damn reasonable to play. A new row of talents has been added for level 100 and new Draenor perks for level 91 to 99. So if you want to go over your classes new talents, I will leave a link to the description in this video. Like I said, that will show you every single new talent that will be out. Basically, there will be talents at level 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90, and then at 100. Even though there's a gap of 100 or 15 levels every time, they've decided to do the very last talent point at level 100. Next up, the garrisons are a new feature available in Draenor, where you can build a base, recruit followers, and send them on mission. That's exactly what it sounds like. You can start your own little base as a nerd in World of Warcraft, where your character is kind of like the ruler of that place. And like it says, you can actually recruit followers, send them to missions. Now, this is not a guild-based thing. I know there are a couple of people that asked me that. This is not a guild-based thing. They were thinking about that at some point, but it is indeed going to be a personal thing. You can invite friends over and all that, but it is not like the guild master of your guild is going to be the almighty ruler. That is going to be you instead. We have balanced the functionality of agility, strength, and intellect. So they made it basically a lot easier, because as you can see, the next point, hit and expertise has been removed. They are no longer needed in order to make reliably land attacks. So basically what they've done is change the stats around in the Warlords of Draenor, where it just becomes a lot easier to understand, where you don't need to have the hit cap anymore and the expertise cap. You can just sort of gear up a whole lot easier. I'm not completely sure if that is a good change or a bad change. I suppose it is better for if you're like a more casual player in this game, that you don't need to worry about your hit cap. I always kind of liked just barely figuring out how to hit that 6% hit cap or whatever it exactly is in World of Warcraft, but you know, they made it a little bit easier to understand, and I don't think that is necessarily a bad thing, as it really isn't that big of a deal. The pace of healing has been adjusted to allow for more tactical decision making, recording efficiency and throughput on both single target and multi-target heals. Passive and auto-targeted healing have been reduced in effectiveness in order to emphasize the actions and choices of healers. So that is exactly what it is. The pace of healing has been adjusted, so it's going to be a little bit more tactical instead of just blindly spamming your ability, and that is obviously a good change. Racial traits have been rebalanced so that all racial races have similar combat performance. So what it used to be is that, for example, trolls would get a DPS boost. There's no more. It's going to be pretty similar all around, where picking a race, even though it was pretty much negligible anyway, you didn't really need to worry about it, it is going to be even less important. So picking a race is purely a graphical and a starting zone thing, and obviously the animations and all that, and you do not need to worry about the racial traits anymore as far as combat performance goes. There will be a couple of things still in there, like humans, for example, do get more experience or more reputation gains and all that. But, you know, as you might have guessed, that is not gonna change when it comes to doing the maximum amount of DPS or the maximum amount of healing. All classes have had several abilities pruned, with a focus on redundant and less used abilities to cut down on button and keybind bloat. Now that is a whole lot of difficult words in one sentence, what basically means they have removed a couple of abilities that are not being used all that much. So if you want to go over that list, once more, there will be a link in the description. The amount of crowd control abilities in the game, primarily in PvP, has been drastically reduced. Many crowd control abilities have been removed, and many diminishing returns categories are now merged together. So this is one of these things. There were tons and tons of crowd control abilities in the game. Like it says, it is mainly for PvP, but they didn't all get used at all. Most of the time you had to make a choice whether or not you wanted to use a certain ability. And I think all in all, it is a pretty good idea to remove a couple of them. It's gonna be interesting how this is gonna turn out though, primarily in PvP, because if it's gonna be too easy and there's not going to be that many options anymore, it might make the game a little bit more plain than they would want it to go. But there's only really one way to find out, and obviously considering these are still alpha changes, they may cut back on this a little bit, but this is the first point that I don't really like all that much. Several common buffs and debuffs have been merged or removed where they were redundant. Well, that's pretty self-explanatory. All characters now learn a few important major glyphs automatically as they level up. I like this quite a lot. Whenever you were leveling in World of Warcraft, you always had this issue that you weren't completely aware when you were supposed to buy the glyphs and what glyphs you should be using, and you know, really, it wasn't really a fun way of doing things. So I kind of like that they are giving you a couple of major glyphs for free automatically as they level up. A pretty cool system. I quite like that change. Next up, the amount of instant healing in the game has been toned down by giving cast times to several instant casts. Or wait, let me rephrase that. The amount of instant heals in the game has been toned down by giving cast times to several instant cast heals. So whereas it used to be previously that you could cast these abilities instant, it is going to be a little bit of a cast time. With some you can actually move while casting, so it is not like it's completely nerfed or anything, but it's just going to change the pace of healing as they already said previously. Vengeance has been redesigned and renamed Resolve. Resolve does not increase outgoing damage, but does now increase tank self-healing and absorption based on the damage taken, so pretty straightforward there as well. Phasing requirements, character position on some prominent abilities have been loosened and removed. Now what does this mean? This one is actually a little bit interesting to read like this, but basically what it means, sometimes if you were not in range of your opponent that you were fighting, and you were not facing them with your character, something like your Frostbolt would not actually hit. What it's gonna do now instead is that you can actually have a lot less of a prominent facing to your opponent, and it will still go right there. Yeah, not the biggest of deals. Also one of these things that is going to help casual players out the most, because honestly, if you're playing this game properly, it should not really be that big of a deal, but all in all, a pretty decent change. Next up, the mana cost of resurrection spells has been reduced to make it a little bit easier to recover from a wipe. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory as well. Professions no longer have combat beneficial perks tied to them. Now what does this mean? For example, what it used to be, if you would actually max out your mining, you would get a whole lot of extra health. And this health would obviously be pretty important if you're gonna do any kind of PvP action, or you're gonna do any kind of PvE action even, or anything in general. The HP is gonna help out. Now what they've done is indeed still keep the little benefit perks that the professions do have. They're still gonna keep those, but they changed them, so they're no longer going to do anything in combat anymore. Last but not least, there are multiple class-specific changes, including things like improved distinction between different talent specializations and new masteries. Consult the class-specific sections below for more information. So that is basically what this whole long-ass article is about, with all the changes to all the classes. I'm not gonna go over all of those because it's gonna take me like 3.5 hours to cover everything. But I hope this helped you out anyway. All in all, a lot of really awesome changes are made to the game. I am excited for Warlords of Draenor, so I'm very curious if you are as well. Make sure to let me know in the comment section right below that like button whether or not you're excited about this game. So I want to thank you guys all for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, and I will see you in the next video. Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and welcome to a new game of StarCraft 2 Heart of the Swarm. Today we're gonna take a look